For this video, we will be reviewing the changes that have happened involving the rewrite of the Microvellum door library data, which is now inside version 48 and newer, any library newer than that. So this would specifically be the solid wood panel doors. The MDF and the slab doors, they're relatively unchanged. I mean, a few minor things, but so we're not going to dive into every detail here in this video, just kind of broad. There will be other specific videos for each of the different topics, so we're just going to kind of highlight what has changed to help those users and techs who maybe are used to using the old data and they want to learn real quickly what has happened or what's different. The original data was written many moons ago. Originally, it was only designed to accommodate the 3D drawing or the 3D representation of the doors and drawer fronts. So now what we're going to have here is they're much more adept at giving you accurate cut lists in addition to the 3D representation, and a lot of people also accurate machining for some of these parts. So we've also come a long way in the last decade with how to better write formulas and architect the spreadsheet data layout. We also have some new spreadsheet functions and techniques that nowadays that just kind of enable us to write smaller and easier to understand formulas. So we've also made it much easier. This is really important and during this process to make it easier to add your own door styles and even add a whole new library. So you're going to find that it's going to be much easier than before. Speaking of formulas, let's go ahead and start inside the cut parts of this little demo product here. So before, we had hundreds of formulas all in here. Maybe I'll show you an old one. A/B compare old and new. These would reference VLOOKUP tables directly right in the width and length and origins everywhere. So here's the new formula. Well, let's start with the old formula for the flat panel. The width was, raised panel width minus VLOOKUP, yada yada, 11, VLOOKUP 8, VLOOKUP 10. It was really hard to read, and now we have, center panel quantity. There's no references. In fact, if you do this, it's just, you can pretty much understand quickly what's going on or where you need to go, and etc. So unless you memorized all 100 plus column numbers, it was just really difficult to comprehend that. So you kind of practically, we used to use a cheat sheet, just to read and understand the formulas. And so all you'll find in the new, all of these formulas have been, that has been removed, including the origins and all of the machine token data as well. There should be no more references to external lookup tables that make it hard to read. So in order to accomplish this, we had to add a few, not too bad, we had to add a few new, dozen or so local variables here at the bottom of the list of your prompts. And this probably also, I think, helps speed up the performance of the spreadsheet calculations. So instead of hundreds of formulas scattered all over the place, pinging this large external lookup table hundreds of times, we have it look here once, and then all those other local formulas will then look here too. So in here is where it's the one place where it's going up into the lookup table. And we've also, I'm trying to do this more and more, we will encapsulate a formula with if error. So in case something bad happens, every once in a while, that can happen to people, something goes awry, it's not going to just throw an error, which will then break the whole subassembly. It'll at least return something if it couldn't find something happy here. So you'll see that creeping up more and more. It seems to work pretty good. So next, let's jump over to the Door Wizard spreadsheet. I'm just going to go here, Workbook Designer, double click the D, and here we have our DSVX, which was the spreadsheet extension. This is where most of the magic happens. And the first thing that you're going to notice is lookup tables have been moved. They're no longer on this first tab here. They're gone. So now we've created a second worksheet like here, and they've been moved over here. So this was primarily done to kind of ease the process of adding and removing the rows without the stress of disturbing other data that maybe is off to the left. And since one of the purposes here was we wanted to make it easier to add new door data, this seemed like a kind of a good idea to do. So if you want to add more door styles, you just insert, shift down, and that's it. You don't have to worry about disturbing other data. And same with if you wanted to delete something, same thing, just real quick, boom, boom. So I like that much better. The tables are defined starting on column C, and that kind of gives us a couple of columns here for growth or just to put notes and stuff. So let's kind of start at the top and work our way down. Okay, so we've got our column. Kind of nice if you freeze that first 2 rows there. You can see what's going on when you scroll down. Okay, so first table is the largest of the tables. It's called Lookup Table Door Style, and the table names we put here at the top of each table to help identify what the table is. And this one it used to be called Lookup Table Door, but for better clarity and consistency with all the other tables, this kind of made more sense. Lookup Table Door Style, because that's what these are. These are all the door styles that are used for all the door libraries, and they all live in here. And the different door libraries, we took a few minutes here and kind of separated them out by some different colors to help it easier to read. So these are your generics. This is an example Caldor library with the 4 different types, and Waltzcraft is just a small sample, user defined, and then we have MDF doors. You'll notice that the Elias door library is not in this, not here. We found that we were getting some better spreadsheet performance without that extra 500 or so extra rows of door styles, especially if you weren't using Elias. Part of me thinks that the reason these MDF doors were a little bit slow was they were kind of at the bottom of this giant list. They were below the Elias rows, so every VLOOKUP formula had to scan all the way to the bottom of 500 plus rows to get to these MDF doors. And considering that most people won't be using Elias, or that perhaps maybe they want to add their own, a couple hundred door styles, removing them from the master wizard just kind of made sense. It's much easier to kind of scroll up and down without all the extra rows. Now, if you still want to use Elias, they're not gone. You would just simply point to a different door wizard that's entitled Elias Door Wizard in your spec group interface, and then you could begin using the Elias again. So previously, this table was over 110 columns. I forget exactly, it's quite a few columns. And we've eliminated a lot of the columns that we found were not really being used. And we wanted to keep the table size at a minimum, which I think will also help with performance. There's a few blank columns here and there which can be used for other new features if need be, or if you can add your own. I could probably go on for about, just on this topic alone, for 30 or 40 minutes explaining all the different changes and additions that we made to these columns. Many new things were added, but I think I'll just highlight a few in this video here. 9 and 10 are now we use to control when a drawer front kicks to having either a reduced rail size, and then when it kicks to becoming a slab. I think before we just had the slab, so now we can at 7 inches it will do something what we call reduced rails. So it's like an alternative smaller size top and bottom rail to maybe try to squeeze a 5-piece panel out of it, but then eventually it's just going to kick to a slab here in this value here. And so that structure's been set up for you to use. Column 5, before I get too far, column 5, I mean, we've always had this column 5 as the construction, but now this is one of the ways that we control which prompts appear in the prompt UI. So you got to pay attention to, like, if it's a slab, for example, then in your door, in your one door base or whatever product you're in, we don't necessarily want to see all those 5-piece door prompts, so it'll hide. And likewise, if it says MDF routed, it just may hide and unhide certain prompts. So that's nice. It simplified the formulas greatly. The default style and rail sizes are now all together here. They're not spread all over the place. We've grouped them all together. Doors, finished end panels, and now this is new. We can independently control the drawer front parts. We didn't have this before. So here's the doors, here's the drawer fronts, and here's the finished ends. A lot of control here. And speaking of drawers, 36 over here, 36 and 40 and 44. These are we can now also independently control what profile names are going to be used for the drawer fronts. As sometimes, not always, but sometimes those need to be different. So now we can do that without having to create additional tables and all that. Let's see here, 50, 51, 52. These are now for a new slab applied molding feature. So we'll talk about that a little more later. Let's see, 61 allows us to control the thickness of the center flat panel. If the thickness ends up being greater than the groove, we also can activate a rabbet machining option. Again, I'll show you, we'll look at that a little bit later. And then we have at the end here, towards the end, we've got the thickness columns, which are coming from a new set of formula generated materials. So more on that also. And then at the caboose here, we've got the buyout column. Right now it's not really being used, but you can specify individually which styles that you need to be a buyout. Instead of just having a blanket all buyout or none buyout, now we can specify which ones you want to be a buyout. Scrolling down the remaining tables, you'll notice right away that there's a lot less tables than before. I think it ends right here at these MDF ones. That's it. A lot less tables. Much of it has been consolidated, condensed. The lookup table door library, this little guy right here. This contains the door library. So to create a new library, you would start here by you just insert a row like that. Insert a row like we did earlier, and put in the name of the library and these two things, and you've started a new library. So pretty easy. And same goes with the lookup table door types. Right, we've got library, type, style. Right, those are the three characteristics. And so just insert some rows, add additional door types to your library. No other library-wide formula editing that would be required like in the past. One cool new feature too here off to the right, we can enter in the names of the subassemblies used for each door type. So this was previously a challenge because, again, you had to edit the formulas all over the library just to rename or maybe add a new set of door subassemblies. I mean, maybe you wanted aluminum type doors, okay, and it was totally different than the slab or the wood or the MDF. It was just something, you just wanted a totally different subassembly. Now you can enter that in here. So for example, single, door single MDF. So these are the kind of those old, the original MDF doors that didn't have any machining. But then this one with machining is the new one that does have the tokens for machining. So this eliminated a ton of formulas, whereas previously, so this would be the previous formula, if this door type equals generic slab, then do this hard locked name of a subassembly. So a lot of hard locked references in here, so it made it really difficult to, it was not very flexible. And now it's just simply VLOOKUP, column 4. And column 4 is the name of the single door. So pretty easy. I like that much better. So then we've got lookup table door profiles inside. And this one now only manages the inside profiles. I think then we've got lookup table door profiles panel. And this only contains those profiles used for the center panels. We used to have these profiles kind of living, but both living in two different tables, and it was kind of very confusing, frankly, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. So they're now individual. It just makes more sense. Yeah. So these are just, they're not having to list these twice. Actually, I think it was these were listed twice. Yeah, these were in their own table, and then they were for some reason also in here. So we just kind of took a step back and reevaluated why the data was the way it was. It's much more logical. We even have the smallest one is this one, outside profiles. And this handles your outside profiles. And again, you can see the color coding scheme here. These are the sample Caldor. These are the Waltzcraft. These are the MDF, etc. So the colors are relatively consistent as you scroll up and down, just to kind of help aid in what you're looking at. So looking back at the profile one, a couple things have changed. 22, a lot of it's the same. 22, it used to be the raise panel back location, and 23 used to be the flat panel back location, and these were the dimensions that we would reference from the back side of the door. And now we are referencing these parts from the front or the face of the door, which makes dealing with the different door thicknesses much easier. So we've got a little thing here. So now column 23 is the rail face to panel groove, which is this one. And so using this value plus, the raised panel offset face to tongue, and then the panel thickness, we can then just properly position the parts, no matter what the style and rail thickness ends up being. It just will, the difference will be towards the back now, like you can see in this little diagram. And then column 5, if you look at the panel guy, right here is your offset face to tongue. They're most of the time the same, but not always. So this column 5 for the center panel is this distance here. Okay. So where were we? here. 26 through 29. These used to deal with the applied molding, but those are now in their own table. It didn't make sense to be here. But these are now the mullion and mutton. They have a true divided light feature. So this looks to a new variable that we added that you can just turn it on. So now we have a choice on how we want the opening light, or the glass openings divided, either one piece of glass or individual pieces per opening. So that's nice. 30, it's an important one here. This is the style and rail thickness. It's no longer a hard value right here. Well, it is and it isn't. There is a hard value in there, but and you can still put one in there, but right now it's pointing to a formula generated material, which I'll touch on that in a minute. Something that you may have noticed here is there's no longer the whole user-defined table is gone. It was decided to remove the whole user-defined apparatus, if you will, and instead simply just use a library called user-defined. And that operates kind of under the same set of rules as all the other door libraries and all the door styles. So for someone wanting to quickly create their own door library, even without inserting rows, all you need to do is go to, it's over here. Yeah, so right here, you could just put in the name of your company or whatever you want to call it. And then it'll transfer over here to this table and and it will just work. And we have some examples of a generic door styles here. Like they're right here. These are just some generic ones to get you started or see how it works. Doing this, it just also really simplified a lot of the formulas all throughout the whole library. Down towards the bottom, we have a couple of dedicated tables. Here they are here to house the applied molding profiles, and another one for the slab molding, which is new. To activate the slab molding on a door, any door if you want, come up over here. I think it's on 50. Yeah, you just put a 1 here. That'll turn it on, and then you just provide the name of the molding that you want to use. And again, it can be different for a door versus a drawer. And there's 2 types of slab molding. One is intended to sit on the face of the door, and another one that kind of goes around the perimeter of a door. Maybe I'll show you that. Show you that really quick. Yeah, so there's one of them here that's a perimeter. So let's take a look at that. So in this product here, let's do a plank width. I just kind of had an example slab molding here. Okay. And there you go. So here's your slab door, and then there is the molding that goes around it. Like that. So let's say we want to try a different type of slab molding. I'm going to copy this one and put it here. Or there is a variable, I suppose. I could have used that. Equals slab molding. Maybe I'll do that. All right, so here's kind of your default. So you can just put that in there instead. Take a look at what happens. I think this should be yes, this is the perimeter style slab molding. Apparently I was experimenting with 1-inch doors, so that's obviously not going to work. Maybe turn that off. Okay, so I set that back to 3/4 of a door, like it should be, and there's your perimeter. So back here, the final tables here, the final three tables at the bottom are reserved for the MDF routed with machining doors. So nothing has changed for these other than maybe some formulas that were renamed to match how we renamed some of these tables. But otherwise, it's all the same. So that kind of covers the tables in the new DSVX. Let's see here. One thing that I wanted to show, we have help text images, right, that appear as you're looking at the doors. And we used to use this column here for the pictures, and you notice that there's no longer any formulas here in these door prompts. Used to be, it was a requirement of an older version of Microvellum that you had to do that, but we realized, oh wait, we don't need that anymore. So we were able to delete all these formulas, and we had to rename some pictures, but in the graphics. But now, even though we've deleted those, we can see here that we have our pictures still. So all we had to do was just do some renaming of the JPEG files, and it just started working, because now this is handled in the user interface, or in the program, meaning. So let's take a look at next thing in the materials UI. We have a new edge banding category called milling trims. And from here we created 4 different profiles, or door profile trim types. And right now they're all the same thickness value. If you look at one here of a negative 3/32, but you now have a structure in place if you can control how much you want to oversize, or how much oversizing you want to do for each of these edge door parts, and kind of giving us a actual cut size versus a finish size feature. So you may have already seen this a little while ago, but we have here, looking at the cut parts, we can see how these conditions have been assigned to each part, and we thought this was a simple yet effective approach without overcomplicating the part size or part origin formulas. We didn't want a bunch of craziness added to the sizes here. This sort of just handles it. Another thing I mentioned earlier, let's switch to a flat panel inset here. Draw this. There's that flat panel rabbet. So right now, it's 3/4. Everything works good. But let's go into I haven't talked about material thicknesses yet, but we'll talk about that here. So here's where we can override the flat panel. So 0 is, whatever the designer intended it to be, which is 3/4, but you can put a different value in there, and then see what happens. So you can see that since we're referencing off of the front instead of the back, everything works. So we have an actual rabbit appearing on the back. Actually, I should have done one with let's see, we need something with, let's do a cope and stick. Here we go, Atlanta. We were able to use the new offset polyline spreadsheet function to kind of accurately give us the needed geometries here to give us the rabbit on like a cathedral shape. So because we knew this point out here, this point was already in the data, but we didn't know these offset points. And so whatever the rabbet amount is, it just offsets it. So that worked out really well. So back to that material thing that I was showing you here. The formula generated materials. It's an interesting data technique that's not really officially ever been used in shipping data, and that may be about to change, though it's not used extensively. This is our first limited usage of the method, and the explanation under the hood of how it's all being achieved, it would probably take too long for this video. So for now, all I can say is when the data developer designs a door style, part of the design is what thickness the style and rail should be, what the center panel should be, because he's creating profile drawings, etc. So there's an intended thickness, but we do need sometimes, some clients need to be a variable. So there is a default. There is a place where we can enter that override, and that would be in here. And in the wizard, you have this door style. These three here are new, and reading this help text, you can kind of see how it's intended to work. So by leaving it 0, whatever that predetermined thickness is, it's gonna use that. But you can override. So let's say I want all these to be 1 inch for my raised panel doors and my style and rails. And there it is, 1 inch door. Now some of the graphics would maybe need to be altered. This particular one, it was never intended to be used on a 1 inch thick door, but you could go in there and alter that profile drawing to clean that up. But for the most part, from the front, it's going to look just fine, and it's going to cut list just fine. And yeah, so that's a really good, powerful new feature. A lot of new features. Hopefully this video gave you a good summary of what has been changed, kind of whet your appetite for the other videos. This is all version 48, and so look for more of these topical videos on this to learn more about each of the items that we discussed, and probably more. Thanks.